Welcome back to the Literary Compass. So in today's video, we will be discussing 25 previous year questions from the Maharashtra SET English examination. So these carefully selected questions will help everyone to understand the exam pattern and identify your important topics and overall strengthen your preparation. So although many of these questions may appear very straightforward or simple, but this session is specially designed to be more analytical rather than just question solving. Okay, so whether you have already appeared for MH set exam before, or is it your first time, or you are just revising before the exam, this session will help you sharpen your concepts, boost your confidence, and enhance your overall preparation. So with that, let's start with the first question. So the first question here is, the phrase "fear is fall" is associated with, we have options. Option A, The Alchemist. Option B, Macbeth. Option C, The Malcontent. And option D, The Broken Heart. So the correct answer for this question will be option number B, that is Macbeth. And this particular phrase, it is spoken by the three witches which appear in the very first act of scene 1 of Macbeth, right? And this particular phase, it kind of introduces the play's major theme, which is, we can say, appearance versus reality, and which suggests that things can be often deceptive, and the moral values can become inverted. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Helen appears in, okay, so the character Helen appears in which of the following works? We have option A, Dr. Faustus. We have option B, The Spanish Tragedy. We have option C, Woman Beware Woman, and option D, The Duchess of Malfi. So the correct answer for this question will be, that is Dr. Faustus. So this character, or Helen of Troy, appears in Dr. Faustus, which is by Christopher Marlowe, and it appears towards the very end of the play, when our main protagonist, that is Dr. Faustus, he summons the spirit of Helen, and he delivers this famous line: "Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burned the topless tower of Ilium?" Okay, so this is the second question. So moving on to the third. Ferdinand is a character in. So we have to identify uh, from the following works. We have option A, The Tempest. Option B, The White Devil. Option C, A Woman Killed with Kindness. Then option D, A New Way to Pay Old Debts. So the correct answer for this question will be option number A, that is The Tempest. Moving on to the next question, question number 4. Chaucer's pilgrims were going to the shrine of. So this is a very easy question, and I think everyone knows the answer. It will be option A, that is Thomas Becket. So in the Canterbury Tales, what happens? All the pilgrims, they travel from London to the Canterbury Cathedral to visit the shrine of Saint Thomas Becket, who was the Archbishop of Canterbury and who was martyred in the year 1170, and whose story we can find in the work of T.S. Eliot, that is Murder in the Cathedral, right? Okay, so moving on to question number 5. To His Coy Mistress is by. This is also another very easy question, and probably most of us knows the answer. So it will be option number D, that is Andrew Marvell. So this particular work, that is to his coy mistress, it is celebrated as a metaphysical poem by Andrew Marvell, and this poem is, we can say, it is an example of carpe diem. What does that mean? That means seize the day. Okay, so this is a one of the, we can say, dominant theme in this particular work, and where the speaker he urges his beloved to make the most of the present, because time is fleeting, time is passing, right? And it is known for its wit, or logical arguments, then vivid imagery, and the metaphysical conceits. Moving on to the next question. Dryden's An Essay of Dramatic Poesy was first published in the year. So, the correct answer for this question will. So we have. So the answer to this question will be the year 1668. Okay. So now moving on to the next question. We have here, which of the following works by Milton is an elegy? So we have options: Samson, Agonistus, Lycidas, Paradise Regained, and Il Penseroso. So the correct answer for this question will be option number B, Lycidas, which is a pastoral elegy written in the year 1637, and to mourn the death of Milton's friend Edward King, who drowned in the shipwreck. Then we have the other works. First one is a closet drama, and it is a dramatic poem intended for reading rather than stage performance, and which was published in the year 1671, and which is actually based on the biblical story of Samson from the book of Judges, and it explores the theme of suffering, faith, redemption, and divine justice. Then we have Paradise Regained. This is, we know, a religious epic, and it is a sequel to the Paradise Lost. Okay, and the last one, it is a lyric companion poem. So this particular work, it praises the contemplation, it praises the solitude, okay, and the reflective temperament, we can say. So moving on to the next question. Which of the following works was written by Bacon? We have the Anatomy of Melancholy, The Advancement of Learning, Utopia, and The Courtier. So the correct answer for this question will be option number B, The Advancement of Learning. And talking about the other options, the first one, that is the Anatomy of Melancholy, it is a comprehensive study of melancholy or depression, as we can call it in modern terms, and it examines the causes, symptoms, and provides us with the remedies, and it is published in the year 1621. Then we have Utopia. This work again describes an ideal fictional society and is one of the most influential texts of Renaissance humanism and political theory. Okay. Then we have The Courtier, which is published in the year 1528, and it outlines the qualities and behaviors of an ideal Renaissance courtier. Okay, so that's all about this question. Now moving on to the next question. Ben Jonson is known for. We have options. Option A, The Comedy of Manners. Option B, The Comedy of Humors. Option C, Sentimental Comedy. And option D, Pastoral Comedy. So the correct answer will be The Comedy of Humors. So in this particular dramatic form, it is based on the four bodily humors, that is blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And according to this theory, an excess of one humor determines a person's temperament. Okay, and if we talk about comedy of manners, it flourished during the Restoration period. Okay, and it is associated with playwrights such as William Congreve and William Wycherley. Okay, then sentimental comedy, it became popular in the 18th century. Okay, and this particular form of comedy, it emphasized on the virtue, morality, and emotional appeal rather than satire. Okay, and if we talk about major playwright, it will include Richard Steele and one of his famous work, that is The Conscious Lovers. Okay, then we'll also have Hugh Kelly, and his one of his important work is False Delicacy. So all this falls under the sentimental comedy. Then we have pastoral comedy. Okay, so pastoral comedy, it is set in a very idealized rural world, and it often deals with love, the disguise and harmony between nature and human life. For example, we have Shakespeare's As You Like It, then The Winter's Tale. Okay, so this works, it contains strong pastoral elements. Okay, so moving on to the next question. The Yahoos featured in option A, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, option B, Gulliver's Travels, option C, A Journal of the Plague Year, and option D, The Vicar of the Wakefield. So the correct answer for this question will be Gulliver's Travel. So Yahoos, they were the greedy and irrational human-like creatures, which is in contrast with the intelligent and rational horses called the hindheims. Okay, so which appears in the, I think, in the last part of this work, right? Then The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. This is a work by William Blake, and this particular work presents Blake's revolutionary ideas on good and evil, then imagination and human freedom. Okay, then we have Journal of the Plague Year. This is written by Daniel Defoe, published in the year 1722, and this is a, we can say, semi-fictional account of the Great Plague of London, which occurred in the year 1665. Then the last one, The Vicar of the Wakefield. This is by Oliver Goldsmith, published in the year 1766. Okay, this is a story which talks about Dr. Primrose and his family, and it highlights the theme of domestic life and virtue and resilience. Okay, so now moving on to the next question. Which one of the following poets wrote in an antique vocabulary going back 3 centuries? Option A, we have Blake, option B, Cooper, option C, Gray, and option D, Chatterton. So the correct answer for this question will be option number D, that is Chatterton. Okay, so he became famous for the Rowley poems, in which he presented as works by a fictional 15th century monk, that is named Thomas Rowley. Okay, and then we have the other options, that is Blake. So if we talk about the writing style of Blake, it is very highly symbolic and visionary style. Okay, if we take into consideration his major works, that is Song of Innocence and Experience, then The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, and Jerusalem, he did not just deliberately imitate medieval English vocabulary. Then we have Cooper. So Cooper writing style, it is very simple and very conversational style. Okay, and one of the well-known poems of his is The Task. And if we talk about the language, it is very, as I've just mentioned, it is very conversational. Okay, so it is not very antique. Then we have Gray. Again, he is also admired for his classical and medieval tradition, but he did not consistently write in an intentionally archaic vocabulary. Okay, so that remains us with Thomas Chatterton. Next question, which of the following poets wrote in the Scottish dialect? Option A, we have Sir Walter Scott. Option B, we have Robert Burns. Option C, we have William Blake. And option D, we have George Crabbe. So the correct answer for this question, it will be option number B, Robert Burns. So he is often called the national poet of Scotland, and many of his poems are written in the Scottish dialect. Okay, and if we talk about Sir Walter Scott, so even though he was a Scottish writer, and in his work we will find that major influence of the Scottish history, then folklore and culture. But he's not primarily known for writing in Scottish dialect. Okay, so that is one thing. Then William Blake, we know he wrote in English, and as we have seen in the previous question, that his writing style is very symbolic and visionary. Okay, so that is obviously not correct option. Then we have George Gray, and he wrote in a very realistic narrative poetry in standard English. Okay, and his particular work, it depicted the rural life. Okay, so that remains us with Robert Burns. Moving on to the next question. uh, Question number 13. The Vanity of Human Wishes is by option A Thackeray, option B Fielding, option C Johnson, and option D Goldsmith. So the correct answer for this question will be Johnson, that is Temple Johnson. Okay, and this particular work, it is written in the heroic couplet, and it is an imitation of the 10th satire of Juvenal. Okay, this is a very important fact about this particular work. Okay, and this particular poem, it reflects on the futility of the worldly ambitions such as wealth, power, fame, beauty, the knowledge, and it emphasizes that human desires can often lead to disappointment. Right? Then, if you look into the other options, Thackeray, William Makepeace Thackeray, he was a Victorian novelist, we know, and he is best known for his work Vanity Fair, which is again a satirical novel about which talks about the society, the ambition, and the hypocrisy. Then Henry Fielding, he is famous for novels such as Tom Jones, then Joseph Andrews. And another fact about Fielding is that he is regarded as one of the founders of the English novel. Then Goldsmith, we know, he is known for works such as The Deserted Village, then The Traveller, then The Vicar of the Wakefield. Okay, so okay, then moving on to the next question. Pope's satire and epistles are imitations of option A, we have Horace, option B, Virgil, option C, Homer, and option D, Juvenal. So the correct answer for this question will be Horace. So Alexander Pope, he modeled many of his satires on the work of Horace, and in his work he adapted the conversational and the moral style of Horace. And talking about Virgil, even though Pope admired Virgil as well, and he also translated parts of his work, but if we talk about his satires and epistles, they were not modeled on Virgil. Same goes for Homer. Pope is famous for his translation of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. Okay, but these are translations of epic poetry, not on the basis of satires and epistles. Okay. Then Juvenal is also not correct. Juvenal influenced Pope more serious and forceful satires, like such as the Dunciad. However, Pope's satires and epistles as a group, are primarily Horatian rather than Juvenal. Moving on to the Next question now. Which of the following works is not by Jane Austen? We have option A, Sense and Sensibility, option B, Northanger Abbey, option C, Rebecca, and option D, Emma. So the correct answer for this question will be Rebecca. And this is a work by Daphne du Maurier, published in the year 1938, which is almost a century after Austen's lifetime. And this is also a Gothic novel. Okay. Moving on to the next question. The biblical character that figures in Keats's Ode to a Nightingale is option A, we have Ahab, option B, Susanna, option C, Ruth, and option D, Mary. So the correct answer will be option number C, that is Ruth. And in the Ode to a Nightingale, Keats refers to the biblical figure Ruth, okay, in one of the poem's most famous line, that is perhaps the self same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth when, sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien corn. So, moving on to the next question. Which of the following is an autobiographical poem? Option A, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Option B, The Eve of St. Agnes. Option C, The Prelude. And option D, Don Juan. So the correct answer will be option number C, that is Prelude, which is an autobiographical epic by Wordsworth, which again talks about the growth of the poet's mind from his childhood to his adulthood. Okay. Then we have Rime of the Ancient Mariner. This is a narrative poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and which tells the supernatural tale of a mariner who kills an albatross and suffers from spiritual punishment before attaining redemption. So it is not autobiographical. The Eve of St. Agnes. This is also a romantic narrative poem by Keats, which is based on the medieval legend that a young woman could dream of her future husband on the eve of St. Agnes. Okay, so it is also not autobiographical because it is not based on Keats' own life. Then Don Juan, it is a satirical narrative poem by Lord Byron, and though Byron includes some reflections that may resemble his own views, but the poem is not an autobiography. Okay, rather than it follows the adventure of a fictional hero, that is Don Juan, while satirizing the European society and politics. Okay, moving on to the next question. Ode to the West Wind was written by. We have option A, Shelley, option B, Keats, option C, Byron, and option D, Southey. So you know the correct answer will be option number A, that is P.B. Shelley. Then moving on to the next question. Coleridge Biographia Literaria is a reply to. Option A, we have Shelley's A Defense of Poetry, Lamb's Tales from Shakespeare, Wordsworth's Preface to the Lyrical Ballads, and Johnson's Preface to Shakespeare. So the correct answer will be option number C, that is Wordsworth's Preface to the Lyrical Ballads. Okay. So, while even though Coleridge he admired Wordsworth's poetic genius, he questions some of Wordsworth's theories, particularly the definition of poetry as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, okay, and the exclusive emphasis on the language of the common people, okay, and the third was the nature of poetic diction. So he criticized Wordsworth on these three grounds, and in this particular work, that is Biographia Literaria, Coleridge also developed his own theory related to imagination, which further distinguishes between primary imagination, secondary imagination, and fancy. Okay. Question number 20 we have the title Far from the Madding Crowd is taken from option A we have Pope's The Rape of the Lock, option B Gray's Elegy written in a country churchyard, option C we have Dryden's Religio Laici, option D we have Cooper's The Task. Correct answer will be option number B, that is Gray's Elegy written in a country churchyard. Okay. If we talk about the other works, The Rape of the Lock, it is by Alexander Pope, and it is a mock epic poem that satirizes the very trivial concerns of the 18th century aristocratic society. Then we have Religio Laici. This is a religious and philosophical poem by John Dryden. The Task, this is a very long and reflecting poem by William Cowper, which deals with the nature and domestic life and morality and has nothing to do with Far from the Madding Crowd. And yes, so this particular title is from Gray's Elegy, and Far from the Madding Crowd's ignoble strife. So this line refers to the peaceful rural life which is away from the noise, ambition, and conflicts of the world. And Thomas Hardy he adopted this phrase as the title of his novel, which is set in the English countryside and which explores the pastoral life, love, and human relationships. Question number 21 we have which of the following works is not by J. M. Hopkins? We have option A The Dynasts, option B God's Grandeur, option C Pied Beauty, and option D Felix Rendell. So the correct answer for this question will be option A, that is Dynast. So it is not by Hopkins, it is by Hardy. Okay. And talking about the other works, God's Grandeur, it is one of the best known sonnets of Hopkins, which celebrates the presence of glory of God in nature despite the destructive effects of industrialization. Pied Beauty, it is a curtal sonnet by Hopkins which praises God for creating the beauty of variety, contrast, and diversity in nature. Okay, and Felix Rendell, it is also a sonnet by Hopkins, which is about a village blacksmith whom the poet has ministered to before his death. Moving on to the next question. Poetry is a criticism of life. This statement. So the correct answer will be Matthew Arnold, and Arnold made this famous statement that poetry is at bottom a criticism of life. So this idea appears in his essay The Study of Poetry, which was published in the year 1880, and Arnold believed that great poetry offers a deep insight into human life and it also serves as a moral and intellectual guide. Okay, and he also proposed the touchstone method of literary criticism, which evaluates poetry by comparing it with the passages from the acknowledged masterpieces. Okay, so next question here is Michael Henchard is a character in, we have options, option A Richardson Clarissa, option B Fanny Bernice Evelina, option C Hardis the mayor of Casterbridge, and option D George Elias Middlemarch. So correct answer is Hardis, the mayor of Casterbridge, and this particular work it features this character Michael Henchard, and he is actually the protagonist in this work. Okay, so what happens here is that this character he sells his wife and his daughter at a fair, and years later, after becoming a respected mayor of the Casterbridge, his past returns to haunt him, leading to his downfall. Okay, And talking about the other works here, Clarissa, it was published in the year 1748, and this work particularly tells the story of Clarissa Harlowe and Robert Lovelace. Okay, then we have Fanny Burney's Evelina, and this was published in the year 1778, and it also follows the social experiences, and we can say the moral growth of our protagonist, that is Evelina and Willem. Then we have Middlemarch, which is by George Eliot, and it also centers on characters such as Dorothea Brooke, then Casaubon, Rosamond Vinci. Okay, so this is also an important work by Eliot. Okay, okay. Then moving on to the next question. So, Porphyria's Lover by Robert Browning is option A, an ode, option B, a ballad, option C, a dramatic monologue, or option D, an elegy. So, we all know that Robert Browning is most famously associated with the dramatic monologue concept. So, the correct answer will be option number C, dramatic monologue. Okay, so this particular work, Porphyria's Lover. So it is one of Robert Browning's earliest and most dramatic monologue. Okay, and the poem is spoken entirely by an unnamed lover who recounts how he murders Porphyria by strangling her with her own hair because he believes that he can preserve a perfect moment of love forever. Okay, and the reader also learns about the speaker's disturbed psychology through his own monologue, okay, through his own dialogues and words, so which makes it as a classic example of dramatic monologue. Then what is an ode? If we talk about, an ode is basically a lyric poem which expresses praise, admiration, or deep reflection on a person, object, or it can be an abstract idea. Okay, a very good example is John Keats's Ode to a Nightingale. Then we have P.V. Shelley's Ode to the West Wing. Okay, then we have ballad. So ballad is also it is a kind of narrative poem which often deals with adventure, romance, or folklore, or it is traditionally meant to be sung, not to be read. Okay, although Browning poems it also tells a story, but it is classified by its narrative technique. Okay, so it is not a ballad. That's why. Then we have an elegy. So elegy is a poem which mourns the death of a person or which reflects on the loss and mortality. Okay. So moving on to the last question. Auden's Musée des Beaux-Arts contains a reference to the legend of option A Hercules, option B Icarus, option C Atlas, and option D Oedipus. So the correct answer for this will be option number B, that is Icarus. And we know that Icarus, it is a part of a Greek myth of Icarus who flew too close to the sun with his wings made of feathers and wax. Okay, and what happened? The wax melted, which caused him to fall into the sea and drown. Okay, and Auden was actually inspired by Peter Bruegel and Elder's painting. The name of the painting is Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. Okay, in which Icarus's fall occurs almost unnoticed while ordinary people they continue with their daily lives. Okay, so he was inspired by this painting. Okay, so. So that's all for today's session. I hope you found this video helpful. If you all did, please like this video, share it with your friends and study groups, and subscribe to the Literary Compass for more PYQs, exam strategies, and English literature related content. And also don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you again for watching. Keep learning, and I will see you all in the next video. Happy studying. Thank you.